What an opener. What an opener.
Can you?
I see
Can you?
you, Andre. I
I,
see
Can you
you.
see me?
I've got you
I
now.
I
can't see
see
you.
you.
I've lost you. Oh, there you go. There you go. Got you back. Got you.
All right. So we all have just shared a mutual sadness and now we'll finished our coffee at the same time, and that's it. Now we just got to start with the day. Ooh,
End
ooh,
of the day.
little early for us, but not too early. Maybe I don't know.
It's late. It's late night. It's deep in the night for me.
Deep in the
Deep
middle
in
of the
the night.
night. All right. So listen. Um, let me share some news. Hang on. Let me see if I can do this. Behold, behold.
I'm beholding.
Are you,
Hold.
Uh,
You put the
yeah.
hold in behold, Mike.
are you
That's right.
have you? Okay, there we go. This should work. Oh man, it's not working. Why is it not working? Oh, there we go.
No.
There
Oh,
it
there we
is.
go.
There we go. Something's
There we
happening.
go.
Oh, there it is, bro.
Okay.
Oh,
Super
Now,
man.
exciting.
Hang
now.
on. What's that YouTube tab up there? An Orthodox priest becomes.
Oh, close that, close that, close that.
Reformed.
That's the one with
Orthodox priest becomes two kingdoms. That's what that was saying.
That's right.
that's the
Yeah.
one with Ortland and that guy that becomes an
Yeah.
evangelical pastor. Man, that was interesting.
Oh,
I
I've
got
been
halfway
meaning to
through.
watch that actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Haven't you watched it yet?
I haven't watched it yet.
Oh
No.
man, that is such a good one. That guy puts out such great content. Wow.
Oh, it's
I was
amazing.
just thinking,
Yeah.
I love, it's like what a blessing it is to be it's like there is a lot of stuff that's bad about being around today, right? It just in ministry
Yeah.
and life and just the way it's gone in the world and it's all its craziness. But one of the cool things about the internet and about like podcasts and YouTube channels and whatnot. The way I feel it's like almost like you walk into a big hall of conversation, like where all the Christian brothers are in there and that you would never in a million years get to meet before heaven. And there they
100%.
are, and they're all having these little table conversations. Like
You
none
can
of them
walk
are
up to
particular.
them.
Yeah, and it's like no one's really in it for the money or anything. It's like no one's. They're just all just having their conversations, just in case anyone's kind of interested, and not really even worried about anyone being interested. So you got like the Lutherans over there. What are they talking about? Dip, 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 dip. Let's go and see what the Lutherans are about. And then you go over there. Well, what are the Catholics? I mean, never would we be able to get such an insight on the Catholics. But there they
Yeah.
are having these great old discussions at Pints with Aquinas, and some of them are really, really good. And then back to Ortland and the Orthodox priest guy, and even the sojourners over here at this end,
Oh
doing our
yes.
thing. And what a great thing that is. I mean, obviously it's like you got to watch it because you could spend all day at the lunch hall, but
Oh, you really could. Yeah.
but it is really like I find it something that I'm really thankful for that. It gives you a sense of balance and perspective and unity, and yeah. So anyway, that's for free. All right, check this whole thing out. Check this out. Um, all
The
things
Pactum.
new, the Pactum
Mm.
Conference. So if you're listening to this podcast and you don't know what the Pactum is, the Pactum podcast, go and check them out. Pat Abendroth.
Mike Greer.
Yes, go have a look at those guys. They are, I mean, honestly, Doctrine and Devotion and the Pactum are, I think, by far the two best reformed, like accessible theological
Yeah.
podcasts.
Super accessible. Super
Just
helpful.
excellent. Like, I mean, both of those, I mean, with Joe and Jimmy, I mean, they could also be like radio presenters and whatever else. They're just like ultra engaging and whatnot. Same thing with these guys on the Pactum.
Yeah.
So
Super
it's
sharp.
like whenever you feel like oh, just everything else is a slug. They take you deep. They feed your soul. They're just good. They're just good. I send all my guys to them. I think they're the best out there. So the Pactum Conference is a part of an extension of their thing in Omaha Baptist Church, Bible Church. I keep saying Baptist. I want them to be Baptist. They are Baptist, but they're a Bible church. Anyway,
Well, if they're a
so
Bible church,
then that's okay. That's fine.
they're gonna be Baptist.
They
Is
got
what
to
I
be
was thinking.
Baptist. Yeah. So this thing is
Yeah.
all about two age, like all things new,
Eschatology.
eschatology, and so
Look
we
at that
got
lineup, man.
look at that lineup. Check it out.
Sure.
So like
Hardcore.
speaking at the same thing as Daryl Hart is a little bit like opening for Guns N' Roses.
Ooh.
Yeah, it is a
Um,
bit. It is a
yeah,
bit.
but
Dude.
There we go. I mean, that's it. There's the guy, man. And then
The
Mike
original
Is
Abendroth.
gangster,
Daryl
right?
Hart,
Yeah.
is he the guy whose articles keep cropping up and he's writing like writing awesome stuff?
In the Nicotine
Academic
Theological
stuff.
Journal is basically, yeah, he's the guy I sent you to. Remember when you were doing that thing on?
Yes.
Yes, that's Daryl Hart. Hold
He's
on.
the guy who's
Great.
written one of the best biographies on J. Gresham Machen.
And obviously, it's
Wow.
mandatory reading. If you listen to this podcast and you have not read Daryl Hart's Secular Faith, you should stop what you're doing right now, buy that book and read it, because that's kind of the whole modus operandus here.
And he's also
wow.
got a no, it's I'm thinking of someone else. Yeah, no, he's really good. He's
Yeah.
really good.
So anyway,
There's a pastor who lives near me who got in touch the other day. He said, "Are you related to Michael Beck?" I'm like, "Well, only by adoption." But
is it a good thing?
he's
or-
like, "Yeah, he's speaking at the Pactum conference." I'm like, "Yeah, he is."
yeah,
Yeah,
come
he
on.
is.
No, it's a real honor. And obviously just fairly close to these. I mean, these guys are our guys, so
yeah.
just
what's up?
really thankful for the opportunity to hang out with them,
Exactly.
if nothing else. And then
Are they Kleinian as well? Like, would they take like a Kleinian?
Definitely.
oh yeah, I mean,
thing
like,
on
dude,
it? Okay.
yeah.
Like solid two kingdoms,
how-
really good on justification, really good on covenant theology. Mike
Yes.
Abendroth
Okay.
also got his own podcast, No
Yes.
Compromise Radio.
Yes, we should mention that. Also brilliant. So these guys are great. And yeah, we're so on the same page. That's so cool. I mean, that's half the thing. I mean, I think just to find other churches that are especially Baptist. I mean, it's kind of interesting that Daryl Hart's even speaking at a Baptist thing. I didn't even know that would happen. I thought it'd be I thought it'd be easier for hell to freeze over sometimes. But
He's
anyway,
like the original Nation warrior child.
yes. And I think it's because Pat and Mike have this relationship, or Mike has a relationship with Daryl Hart. So anyway, whatever, they managed it. It's a real honor. And the lineup looks great. So if you are listening to this in the States and this is a possibility for you, let me use this as a bit of a plug, shameless promo. But
so what are you talking on, Mike?
Look at that, man. That's so the logic of the two ages.
Nice.
And then the new creation, already not yet, second session. And then I am preaching
on the Sunday,
preaching at the church there. Yeah, so that's gonna be cool. Kind of bit of a highlight there.
And there's a Q&A
And
as
you're gonna
well
go
for
to
the
Sunday school.
Yeah, there's a Q&A, and I don't know, I might even, maybe I'll be on the Pactum podcast. Maybe that'll be cool.
Whoa.
Yeah. Anyway, so.
You're going to be at Sunday school for like the first time in what 30 years?
Totally. Man.
Nice.
Anyway, so get to that. I've already.
So that's this year, October, huh?
Yes, that is on when the 6th of October. Yeah.
So how old will your twins be when you go over there?
Who cares? I'm gonna be hanging out with Daryl Hart. Whatever. I've named my one girl. I'll be having a girl and a boy next week. By the way, for anyone who cares, next week we pod and then we go into the hospital. And Lord willing, a boy and a girl, twins. So I've named the boy Daryl and the twin Hart. And the girl Hart. Or maybe I should do it the other way around. Anyway, so
Daryl and G Hart. Yeah. Could get the whole name.
They might give me a little bit of static about that when they're older. I don't know, whatever. I think it's worth it.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Alrighty, good. So what I was going to say about that is if you've already met some people and just know some people through the through this podcast and just other guys up in the States that are able to get up there, and so if you're willing, it'd be great to like connect and talk and whatever. And I might just like rep a little bit of 2H Sojourner gear there.
Yeah, man.
And just a little 2H Sojourner, but I'll wear the Pactum t-shirt most of the time. That's what I'll do.
You're not wearing the Pactum
I'm totally
t-shirt.
wearing the Pactum. I mean, they got such a cool logo. Their logo is a lot better than our logo. I mean, look, they got like this shield thing. Like it's like you just want to go fight some crusades with that, like with this Gothic P. I'm getting that.
Just
getting
put
that
the S
t-shirt.
on a shield, bro.
Yeah,
That's all you
our
gotta
S
do.
is kind of like sketchy.
Our S is in the clouds, man.
Our S is like the whole
glory
point
cloud.
with our S is like we're sketching ideas. We're just thinking about it. We're not too firm on anything. We're just kind of talking.
Just chuck him out there.
But I mean, you go into the Pactum, you're like in the guild. You've got this.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so
I feel like I should start listening to this podcast, Mike. You're selling it to me.
Oh,
Yeah,
seriously, it's great. I mean,
unsubscribe from
And,
Sojourner. Subscribe.
Pat Abendroth
to
has just
Pactum.
released a book on covenant
yes.
theology.
Yes. Oh, that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah.
So his book. I mean, dude, have you seen that thing?
I haven't
I
yet,
mean,
but I
that,
heard all about it.
I mean,
Super
you don't want
excited.
to judge a book by its cover, but this cover is so awesome
It's
that
next
you're sort
level.
of guaranteed. I mean, you think the logo is cool. The logo is not even cool compared to the cover of the book. So
Man,
I mean,
I've
check
just
that.
spent my book budget on Hans
So this is
Bosma.
now the new book that I'm sending everyone to. By the way, this is
Repent.
you know how we need that covenant theology book, that one.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
how we
Yeah.
just need that
Exactly.
one.
What was the one
Well,
before? Hang on. So what happened to the sacred dance or
your
whatever that
Sacred
book
Bond. Yeah,
was?
that was the one
Sacred
I'm
Bond.
sending people
Michael
to.
Brown.
But they are throwing
Michael.
some heavy, sort of Hortonian infant baptism polemic in there. So
Yeah.
you always have to have that conversation afterwards. So I was always on the hunt for a book that's just like nice,
Yeah.
just rounded the whole thing. Great presentation of covenant theology. This is the book.
Yeah.
So
I've got a couple of guys in my church who are exploring covenant theology, and I told them about the Pectum.
Yeah.
And that was the first episode they downloaded.
Oh, no way. Cool.
On the covenant. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's brilliant. No, and he wrote his dissertation. We've talked about that, I think, on the. So anyway, we have to go through all of that and just talk to Pat himself. But until then, I mean, just so that people know, there is that book now available. Go check it out. I might even just throw that link on the show notes as well. Okay, so with that in mind, we come to this wonderful morning for our discussion in this great banquet of Christianity. Here we are talking at the Sojourner table. And you know what I want to talk about? Do you have anything you want to talk about? Because I have something, I have a burning desire.
I'm just Googling Pat Abenroth and coming up with Postman Pat, the movie. So I'm trying.
Famous.
I'm still a bit distracted, if I'm honest. But yeah, go on, Mike. Go on.
Okay. Right. Well, I'll just, because I don't want to be accused of, hustling my own agenda or anything. So if you've got something.
Well, I thought we might discuss some heresiology and Simon Magus. But
what do you got? Heavenly participation. Oh, Nick doesn't look like that.
Yeah, hyperplatonist.
Oh,
that dude reckons that in that book, he reckons that Calvin wasn't Platonic enough.
Yeah. You have to speak for the people that aren't watching this, though.
Okay, Hans Bosma. Yeah.
Yes.
It's just a lot of Hans Bosma. I've just bought a lot of Hans Bosma.
See, now
the funny thing is I've read quite a lot of Hans Bosma already, but I just need some more.
Yeah. Wow, he's the guy who wrote that book on Baxter as well.
Yeah, Baxter.
Okay.
The red, the pepper. Red hot pepper or something it's called.
The little one.
Not
but
the
did
red
he
hot
write
chili
that
peppers.
before he went Anglo-Catholic?
Yeah, long.
I do feel like he's sitting at his own small little table somewhere.
Yeah,
that's my impression. Like I don't feel like he's sitting.
Hans Bosma.
Yeah,
you mad, dude? Everyone loves him.
Really?
No, I don't love him.
I love him. I love him.
Well, he feels a little bit far from my table. Feels like not worth the walk. No,
you mad? I'd run over there.
Would you? Okay. Well, we're gonna have to hear more about that. Okay. Well, I have something.
I know, Mike. Current affairs.
Well, I got something a lot more earthy for you, and it's not quite current affairs. I mean, there was the whole coronation thing we could talk about. That'd be lovely. That'd be lovely too. But I didn't watch it, by the way. Did you watch it?
Did you? Well, you should have done, because if you had done, you would have seen the Greek Orthodox choir chanting Greek Orthodox a psalm in Greek.
Whoa.
And the whole Greek script was included in the the newspaper, so you can follow along. Yeah,
nice. Kalos Pudra, yeah.
Kalos Pudra, yeah.
Kalos. I know where that comes
from. Okay, so here's what I'll throw this on the table anyway. The whole this whole issue of recreation. I need to talk about that. I need to figure that out. What is going on with that? Because I'll tell you where this is all coming from.
Recreation or recreation?
Well, there we go. This is the thing.
Exactly.
Now, it all started when my kids and I, well, I should include my wife. She was there as well. We were all there watching the Lego Master New Zealand. It's this thing on TV. You get Lego Master US, and it's like a big thing. We're not particularly Lego sort of family or anything, but this is fun, family entertainment. Just crazy to see what these guys do.
Yeah,
and it's sort of like I'm watching these guys do these amazing creations, which is like amazing. Like, let me not take away from what they do. Okay, it's like sculpting with a brick. It's totally incredible, especially when you add that like there's mechanism things in there. But then, I mean, you just hear them talk. You just ask yourself the question, like, and then they like break it all up afterwards, and it's just like, what was that for exactly? It's almost like it takes the issue of art, which at least gets to stay there afterwards, but it takes that issue of spending a lot of time on art to its maximum, because now, you thought the tattoo artist had a problem, when his canvas dies. I mean, this is like immediately after you build this thing, it's like done, no one's even using it. And
take a photo, destroy.
Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, well, so there's got to be something. It's about the creation process itself. It's about
Totally.
what is getting these guys to do what they're doing. I mean, they're relaxing. They're escaping. They're doing some. They're all like really well adjusted. Otherwise, a little tad on the nerdy side, I'll say. But just
fellowship. There's the fellowship aspect.
There's the fellowship.
They're with their bros.
There's a social. Yeah. And but yeah, they're all engineers, and so they're not like homeless or whatever, and playing Lego all day. They're just obviously clever dudes that are just spending their time this way. And I realized at that point I might still have a little Piperitis. I might have been stung by. I love John Piper. I think let me not. I don't want to say anything negative.
Yeah,
Piper's my daddy. Okay?
Credit where credit is.
I named my daughter after John Piper.
There we go. And you know what? Piper's your daddy too, even if you don't.
That's right. And so is Hans Boersma. He's also my dad.
What a combo! That's a lunch table right there.
I'll tell you what, suddenly you're interested. Suddenly you want to be there.
that would be intense. It would be an intense lunch discussion.
I'd feel really present. Anyway.
In what way do you feel present?
I'd love to participate in that conversation.
But John, it's just a hot dog. Oh. So we kind of, we got it. Piper, even if it wasn't like, I know people talk about if you sort of got into Calvinism via Piper, you're part of this like new Calvinism, restless reform thing. But that's not necessarily the case. I mean, like, many people were reformed and then loved what John Piper had to say. And so everyone got impacted by John Piper, is what we're saying. He blasted the world with his stuff for a while there. And that's cool. It's okay to admit it. Especially, man, you know what I listened to recently? His poem on Job. What's the heck even? Have you heard? His poetry's
pretty good.
His poetry's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, that is the most touching, profound, beautiful thing I think I've ever heard in my life. If you have not listened to his poem on Job, do yourself a favor. It's like 40 minutes of pure, it's amazing. Anyway, so I thought about this book, Don't Waste Your Life by John Piper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the famous thing where he's like, okay, John Piper writes, I will tell you what a tragedy is. I will show you how to waste your life. Oh, yeah. Consider this story from the February 1998 Reader's Digest. A couple took early retirement from their jobs in the Northeast 5 years ago when he was 59 and she was 51. And now they live in Florida where they cruise on their 30-foot trawler, play softball, and collect shells. Picture them before Christ at the great day of judgment. Look, Lord, see my shells. That is a tragedy. All right. Yeah. That is a book that I read time and time again and made a few resolutions as a result of reading. And then, so I suppose so I'm thinking, I have little thoughts like, I would like to play Lego. I would like to have a little Lego little thing, I would like to do that. But then Piperitis starts creeping in, and I'm like, I realize I'm deeply infected, and I realize I can't even touch a Lego block because it's wasting time, and I do not want to say, Lord, see my Lego blocks, So help me, guys.
Here's what I was thinking about as you were talking about wasting time with Legos and the creation process. So I'm a guitarist.
Yes.
One of the things I do for relaxation is I'll sit down. And I'll pick up my guitar. I will not play a worship song.
Yes.
I will not be writing a new song. What I'll be doing is I'll just be allowing those notes to have their emotional impact upon my state of mind so that I'm brought into a lovely calm place where I'm just tasting the beauty of the note that's there and then it's gone. It's never going to be repeated. There's no one else in the room enjoying it as a spectacle. It's just purely for my own personal downtime. And I guess for me, you know, just thinking about something that you create that never gets seen by anyone or enjoyed by anyone else, it's just perfect, only for your own enjoyment. You know, that's, I mean, I think God had a little bit of that when he was creating. You know, he was creating something, and I don't know when the angels were created, but there would have been a moment where he was creating and it was very good, and who was there to enjoy it with but himself? So I think there is definitely merit, not just therapeutic, but as part of your own gratitude, part of your own peace of mind, just enjoying that creative process. But you can't, of course, you can't do it all the time. It's got its place as part of rest. And I guess that's where I'd be slotting it in. So like a couple walking on the beach collecting seashells, that's a great thing to do on a date.
I mean, yeah, because that's the first thing Candace said to me. She was like, well, this is epic. You know, why is that a tragedy exactly? Because that's like all I want.
Yeah, quality time. I was
like, okay, one of us is not a Christian yet. I was like, what the heck? I'm stuck in a vortex of tension between Piper and my wife. No, I'm joking. But yeah, I mean, like, so yes, I mean, I think we all get that. We say that rest is good. Okay. We know that it needs to happen, but I suppose there is that. Why is Piper right or wrong, and why so? Either way,
I mean, I think on the one hand he's right, because we want everything to count and to glorify God with positive, filled up, extra time sacrificed for good works. I mean, from that point of view, we can't argue. You know, we would always agree that we don't want to allow the good to push out the best. You know, that's a very hard argument to push back on, because you always sound like a flake. You always sound like you're pushing for lukewarmness if you try and argue against the principle of why would you want the good to push out the best.
Right.
But I think there's also something beautiful in the gratuitous waste of being able to have so much creativity that no one else enjoys but just you for that selfish moment.
So like the snowflake.
Glory to God. Yes, exactly. The snowflake. No one ever sees, but when you zoom in and you see it, wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, there are just all sorts of things to factor into this, aren't there? It's like, I guess it's like, if, like, going back to the Lego thing, you know, if that is all you ever do, then at some point you're going to ask yourself a question about why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't come down to some of it to the extent of the question of vocation. Right.
Okay. I like that.
So if you're viewing it like, I mean, and it is, I guess, theoretically possible that your vocation would be an artist who builds Lego, you know,
right.
That would be your vocation. And at that level, then there's no problem, is there? Because, but then again, you know, I mean, if you can make a shoe to the glory of God, you can build Lego to the glory of God.
Yeah.
I mean, and at that level,
I've got a bucket of Lego.
Okay, so I like where you're going with that, because I feel like personally, if I was not a pastor, I'd have a lot less of a problem with this issue. You know, if I could just put it forthrightly in that sense, like there's something about, and I'm not quite sure that this is right or wrong, but there's something about being in ministry that feels that you've said something about not getting tangled in civilian affairs,
worldly affairs,
and there's just something about that has to check in here, and yet you have to also acknowledge these things, you know, and you have to figure out what that looks like for a pastor. I mean, so I try and objectify the whole thing, and you know, if I had to, you know, discover that another pastor was like super into, you know, collecting shells or building Lego or whatever,
or photography,
or something.
There was a time in my life where I bought cameras, very nice, expensive camera. Very nice, expensive lenses. You know, you wake up early in the morning, you go out, and you take 2,000 photos to save one.
Right. Yeah. So this is kind of half the reason I wanted to talk to Nick about it, because he does not seem to have a problem with this thing at all. You know, but you've already mentioned music and photography. Let's not talk about this.
Let's not talk about the sea kayak. You know, so sea kayaking. So buy a sea kayak. Go out for a 30K row. You can't listen to headphones because they're going to get wet. You can't listen to a sermon. you're getting the physical benefit of the exercise, but you're wasting a lot of time. Then you got to pull the sea kayak across the beach to a shower or a hose. You got to hose it down. You got to wash your car after you've had the thing on the car. You're wasting all this time around this recreational thing that you got to do so you don't rust your car out as well.
Yes.
But it's good.
Well, again, I think it does. So the issue of, so if I spent hours and hours a day building Lego, I would feel guilty, and justly so.
Unless it was playing with your kids.
But even still, there's a limit to that. So like, my kids get, a certain amount of kid time, but I've got to fulfill my vocation.
Yeah.
So I think the idea of vocation is very important. So what am I called to do? That thing I must do. And as a father, I am called to be a father. So that's part of my vocation. And as a husband, I'm called to be a husband. So that's part of my vocation. As a pastor, I'm called to be a pastor. That's part of my vocation. I must give time to those things. And in order to give time to those things, I must also rest. So that is all part of my vocation. So I must rest, and I must give time to my wife, give time to my children, and give time to the main functions of being a pastor. So to Bible study and to deliver teaching in various capacities. So that's what I've got to do.
Yeah.
And I think that understanding those sorts of things will allow me to monitor, like, again, even because it may even be that Lego building is something that I'm really good at, but it stresses me out. So if I'm doing it as part of my recreational activity and I'm getting really frustrated by it or stressed by it, and then going into ministry and like kicking the proverbial cat, then that's not a good thing for me either. So there's all kinds of levels at which, but vocation, I think, is one tool to use to say, like, how am I using this responsibly? What I think is more complicated from the level of vocation is about money. Okay. So, let's say I have to buy that Lego, right? Because I enjoy it or whatever. It's a great recreational thing, but I got to spend the cash on it. And we all know Lego is not cheap. And we all know that cheap substitute Lego doesn't fit with real Lego.
No.
We know those.
Does now.
Does it?
No.
Yeah.
This changes everything.
Does now.
Well, we can end the podcast right here then.
Just remember, all Lego prices must be divided by 3. Because there's you, your kids, and your grandkids are all going to play with it.
Wise words, indeed.
Yep. We've got all our Lego stored in this massive box, just waiting for our grandkids. Our kids spend hours playing with Lego.
I know a guy who buys Lego, doesn't open it. He just buys it in the box, sticks it in the cellar.
No way.
So here's a justification for Lego.
Because it's an investment.
So we bought Lego regularly for our boys. We have 2 boys, and boys love Lego. One of my sons is now a structural engineer. He played with Lego.
There we go.
So we've kept all that Lego.
Indoctrinated him in this binary gender.
Not at all. I mean, one of the things we did is like we would actually, because we did photography, so we took photography and Lego, and so we bought like various Lego sets, Pirates of the Caribbean, whatever, and then we did a photograph, move the thing, photograph, move the thing, photograph, and we made movies. Still cool. Those, what are those still something movies? And then you put like a soundtrack to it. So you're learning how to use a computer, you're learning how to use a camera, you're learning how to, just build a plot. You're doing all these skills are coming into play with your kids. It's awesome. Yeah.
So, I mean, once again, I think we've established that Nick has no problem with these things. If you're doing still frame shots, I mean, like, you're on next level. I mean, that's like the ultimate zenith of patience, and you're mixing that with
quality time with your boys.
No, totally, I get it. No, so, but just bringing it, let's, because Lego, I think that, like, let's, I agree, it's a great thing. I mean, like, just it's whether you're into it or not, everyone's got to acknowledge there's some sort of engineering thing going on there. It's a great hobby for kids and whatnot, and adults seem to really do amazing things with it as well. But so it is like it's a thing, it's a genre, it's real. But just bringing it to what we're saying about Piper's thing, then it's almost as if, just coming back to what you were saying, Andre, when we get to the end, there is a sense in which you can say, no, Lord, these are my shells. As long as those shells are well a good stewardship of like those shells represent you resting well to do what it is that the Lord called. And then you can, without shame, as it were, although all our best works are filled with sin, I'm not denying any of that point, but you know what I mean? Even we're going to mess up on this as well. But there is a sense in which it's legitimate to present those shells at the end, knowing that those shells have led to a good marriage, have led to a good, some good time with your kids. Don't know how you would manage that with shells, but there we go. And, and a good ministry that has run the full course. We're saying that, right? Or am I missing some part of
it? Can I defend woman for a while against Piper? And I'm sure that sounds terrible, but let's take a woman who's a homemaker and she wants to nest. She wants to build a house that's pretty, and she spends hours crocheting a pillowcase because it's part of her job to make a beautiful house. I mean, so collecting shells and putting them in that beautiful spot in the bathroom as she creates this lovely bathroom scene. I mean, all of that stuff, I don't want her life to feel irrelevant because she's focused on aesthetics, because she's focused on something, to try and beautify something, which on the last day may not survive the fire. You can't trivialize that.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I think that's a huge point as well, and it plays into the whole art and beauty thing. So I keep thinking of, as we have this discussion, of A Leaf by Nigel. The short story,
right,
by Tolkien.
Yes, the short story that I've tried about 17 times to get to the end of without fall asleep every time. I'm sure it's fantastic though.
It's great for curing insomnia, if nothing else. No, well, like most of Tolkien and Lewis's stuff, their stories, right? And even the guys that they liked. Like, have you ever read the introduction to C.S. Lewis's introduction to George MacDonald, who was like the major inspiration behind both Tolkien and Lewis, right?
Right.
And his introduction is hilarious. It's like most of his stories are average at best, In other words, like the guys they loved were totally rubbish storytellers. Right. It was the idea behind it and the principles behind it that they really latched onto, which is kind of the same for me and Tolkien. Okay. A Leaf by Nigel is a pretty rubbish story, if I'm honest, but like it nearly made me cry just something because of the point it was making.
Right. Totally.
And it is about that thing that actually there is worth. So, okay, so maybe to come in like this is, if one tool is the tool of vocation, which means that if the thing is not my vocation, it must be for rest. All right, that's one tool. Okay, and if it's neither my vocation nor rest, then I need to ask questions about how much time I'm devoting to it.
Right.
But another question or another tool that you might be able to use is the question of the kind of two ages thing. That actually, are you treating this thing as a sojourner, or are you acting as if this world is your home with the thing, or are you dismissing that overlap so that you're treating yourself like a desert monk or a desert ascetic, who's dismissing any kind of value in this world whatsoever. And we're in that overlap in between, where you're acknowledging the worth of beauty, inherent in beauty and in art and in crocheting a cushion or something like that. There is worth in that we are living as sub-creators, image bearers, made by the creator. And that's not bad. That's not a negative thing. That's a positive thing. That's in some sense a reflection of the world to come. The problem is if that becomes something that we latch onto or devote ourselves to as if we are already there. So does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking so what I'm understanding, I think it's a really powerful point if I'm understanding correctly here, in that let's say you take the shells analogy, right? It seems like, and maybe this is a way to come back and redeem some of Piper as well, because the whole thing there the tragedy seems that his whole life was aimed at the point of that life being to retire and get your best life now, as it were. Like that was heaven. The collecting the shells was the goal of it all. It was heaven. It was walking around on the beach and working really hard and like doing, standing on whose ever head you needed to stand on to get to that point where you can now experience your new creation walking along the beach at 50 years old. We still got a bit of juice in you, and that is, exactly what it would mean to me to, buy into this world and forget that, there is no world to come.
Totally. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
So now, yeah, go for it.
So I think there are legitimate questions about retirement, right? There are legitimate questions. Retirement is a relatively modern phenomenon.
Yeah.
And even today, even in our world today, it's a relatively exclusive phenomenon for the wealthy, for the West. Most in the world won't retire in that sense, that they kick back, relax, and enjoy the fruits of their labors, right?
Right.
Not that many people, relatively speaking, have that privilege. But I think that, again, it's not that you can't enjoy rest, and it's not that you have to always be uber productive, John Wesley style. So, like if you do get to a certain age, a fruitful life for Christ is going to look different, very different to what it was when you were in your 20s and 30s. In the same way that a fruitful life for Christ is going to look very different when you have young children to when your children are older. It just takes a very different shape. So, I mean, I would hate for someone in my congregation, for instance, who perhaps was, sort of at the twilight of their life and is really living their day, interceding for others, yes, but also just enjoying God every moment that they can, through meditating on the scriptures, through a walk around the garden, through staring at the birds out their window, through conversing with friends over the telephone or whatever. Like, these are all good things that represent a fruitful life for Christ at their stage of life. So, I mean, these are all factors into it. But the idea that you achieve some kind of eschatological goal because you have enough money to do that, I think is a dangerous one for Christians.
Yeah, that's good. So if we work that out a bit further, thinking, because let's say we use, as you said, you got the tool of vocation to kind of come at this problem. By the way, the rain is falling hard, and this is coming through. Can you hear it? I've got noise suppression on high, so hopefully that helps. But yeah, you've got this tool of vocation to attack this problem, and then by preference, be the two-age sojourning tool, obviously, to attack this problem. And I think that's really helpful, because then it means that it really becomes a matter of stewardship in this life, and a matter of understanding the tension and complexity that we're in every single day in this life, as people that have one foot in heaven and one foot on earth, so to speak. So it's like you're not approaching every question with that overly intense monastic kind of zeal, but you are taking the full intensity of both worlds. You're letting both worlds bear on this question, in that, let's say it is as simple, and whether it's photography or music or I don't know, what else can we throw in there, like shell collecting? I don't know. We need something more trivial. We need something like one of my things is actually, this is kind of too useful to be trivial, because but one of the things that I do, I've just always done, is it's just code little games for language games and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
it's far too useful.
That's way too useful. Especially now that my son's starting to code, it's pretty cool. We're spending family time. I'm getting some language stuff for my students. It's like, it's actually turned into quite a productive.
You've thoroughly ruined your analogy now.
I know. I need something like, let's say I just wanted to do a little bit of art, like pixel art or something, which I don't really want.
What about brewing your own beer?
That's too useful, because you get to obviously enjoy
far too useful.
And that's obviously justified, and no one would even deny
that. What about playing video games?
Video games. Well, yeah, that's the nice. That's the pariah, right? That's the I like that. So playing video games, like, I don't do that at all. My whole little thing is like, I can't play it unless I make it.
That's like me and music. I don't like playing other people's songs. I only play my own stuff.
Exactly.
That's classic.
But yeah, I mean, like, I would love to be that guy who just is able to switch off for a little bit and play. I could see how it'd be super relaxing and whatnot.
I play games, but I'm always using it as a time to listen. It's never about the game. So it's just it's a downtime where my hands are being kept busy. But I could be listening to something. Sometimes I'd listen to a sermon or a podcast or an audiobook, and I'd watch a guy building a wood hut in a forest in Russia over 3 years on YouTube. But I have the sound down while I'm just watching him.
See, now it's like Nick is the guy to talk to on this, because you just take it to the next level. I mean, like, dude, you know what you should do? You should like create a 5-hour still frame movie about you watching this whole thing. And, that would be, but like, so another thing, I actually, here's a good one. Just before we go to video games, which is almost too easy, but this kind of jogged my memory. So recently, Nick points me in the direction of RPG, lit RPG. Which does not mean that RPG's lit, yo. It doesn't mean that. It means...
It does mean that.
It does mean in that.
Role-player game literature.
Okay, so which he told me about this, and I was in shock and awe, and I couldn't really believe it, because I was just mentioning, I could see a healthy time of leisure. Oh, there's that conversation as well. What leisure actually means, which is not, it's a time to... It's almost like if you got the servile arts, right? Which are those mechanical arts, those arts that are necessary to another end. You learn how to do something so that something else can be done, and engineering and so forth. And then you get the liberal arts, which are the arts of the Liber, the free person, the one who is able to do something to experience it as an end in itself. So to enjoy a piece of art for no other reason than its end. Or a good literature, this is what has become associated with the liberal arts. So obviously, as a slave, you never had any leisure time, right? So you never were able to participate in the liberal arts. You always, if anything, moving towards those mechanical arts. The great privilege of the fact that we're not slaves and that we have this leisure time is that we now get to appreciate things that are ends unto themselves, and we have time to do that. The real trick, though, and this is, I'm moving towards, is it lit RPG or RPG lit?
Lit RPG is the most common.
Okay,
reference.
lit RPG. Yeah. So I'm moving towards that direction. But basically what I'm saying is, like, you get this time now, you got to steward it well. You want to spend the best leisure time possible, which, is not necessarily downtime, but time to appreciate the thing in its end. So for me, that's like always a bit of a upskill process. I want to read a book that's a little bit too difficult for me. I want to appreciate it for no other reason than, so I would put like Tolkien fantasy. It's a lot of that in that genre, or this category, or some other good writing, whether it be old or new. And then along comes this whole RPG thing. So I've like stayed away from RPG because I see lots of people spend a lot of time. That's actually probably a way better analogy than Lego to begin with anyway, because, people play RPG games,
Dungeons and Dragons,
for like ever and ever and ever. And they get totally obsessed with it. And, it becomes like this whole thing to them.
Well, the millennial culture does have a strong gaming culture to it.
Okay, it does. Yeah. But I mean, now, but I mean, I'm thinking specifically on these online RPGs where you like go and you do a quest and then you like get gold and then you do another quest and then you get gold.
Like a Skyrim
and you like
game or a
Pokemon Hunt.
It's just like it gets, I mean, trivial feels like a good word to encapsulate what's going on there. And so like, fine, if it's giving you rest, I know a lot of those same arguments can apply. But it feels like it tests the limits to me a little bit. So anyways, but I've always appreciated the genre, the whole like exploratory quest genre, and the way it integrates with epic fantasy and so forth. So there's just always that tension there. So when you mentioned there's this whole genre of literature where you get to like do the epic fantasy thing without the grinding on some like random, video game, I was interested. Now here's the problem. This is another thing that I can't believe I didn't bring up front, because this is even more important as a catalyst than the Lego issue. But it is connected in that, like, I was an hour into the book, the Land. I was into the Land. That's the book, if anyone wants to check it out. And I started to feel these emotional pangs. Like I started to feel deeply distressed at every level. I started to realize Piper has infected my very soul. So I think what was going on there is it is clearly not awesome literature. It's like, it's clearly not at that level, that you would read like I don't know, Wheel of Time or anything like that.
The Land wouldn't be the most philosophically stimulating, worldview building, but it does develop, because when he has it, because I mean, I don't know how deeply where do you want to start?
Well, before I go there, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, because this is what I'm looking for. So I'm reading this thing, and it's like it's starting to turn into a little bit like it feels like a Netflix vibe, you know. It feels like I'm that entertained, you know. It's like it's too
Yeah,
easy, you know what I mean? It's
flowing
just
in.
like I'm just flowing along with this guy, and he's like, you know, doing, oh, now he's like beat another wolf, and whoa, you get coins, you get sword, you know,
Yeah,
and it's
loot.
just
Oh, we've all got like a little loot instinct. Anyone's getting loot, we're like watching. It's like
exactly.
people unwrapping presents on YouTube.
No. So anyways, there I am, you're in this thinking, dude, this is a cheap thrill. This is not cool. This is like this is not good use of my leisure time and I'm not
Yeah.
studying things. So now it could be that it turns into this epic thing and whatever. But let's say it didn't, for argument's sake.
Yes.
That's kind of like the video. Now we're at the
I
video
stopped
game
listening
genre.
at that point and returned the book.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So there.
one thing to do.
So I mean, there are. I mean, let's talk about that RPG.
TV's another one. TV's a big one. We need to throw TV
Exactly.
in.
I mean,
Yeah.
people watch hours and hours and hours of binge watching, season watching. I mean,
Yes.
binge watching, season watching, and also any form of book that has more than one in the series. That you're going to be suffering from the same temptations there.
Right.
And it's a matter of balancing your leisure time and how you use it in a constructive way.
Right.
But let me tell
It's
you
true,
what.
although I would highly commend binge watching Band of Brothers.
You can't though. Where do you even get that? I tried.
You buy the hard copy discs, Mike.
We
Yeah,
don't
we've
even
got a
have,
few of those.
We don't even have machines that play those things anymore.
We've still
PlayStation plays it.
Oh, really? Okay, nice.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So this is all
And
coming back to the video game.
So I mean,
Yeah,
lit RPG. Here's Nick's reason for enjoying it. So I'm a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Deeply love philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very interested in apologetics. I engage with people who are writing as reflections of the culture they're writing from.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at, as they seek to build an alternative universe with or without God, I'm always looking to see how they build it. So what makes a thing a right or a wrong thing? What makes a community the ideal community? When it comes to, so in lit RPG, what often happens is you have a character who starts off as a noob. He's a newbie. He's a starter. And then he develops his character. Mm-hmm. And at some point, he'll probably become a town leader or a community starter. Mm-hmm. And at that point, he then has to begin to rule people and put laws in place. And he's got to start punishing criminals. He's got to define a crime. And so from this point of view, my Christian worldview is constantly in conversation with people who are producing worlds. And for me, it's just a wonderful exercise in engaging. And so I've always got two hats on as whenever I'm reading. I mean, I've always been very critical of the redeeming literature movement and redeeming movie movement.
Yes.
And the only reason I'm critical of it is because that's one of the hats that's not my natural hat.
Okay.
My other hat is my evangelist, apologist, critic, cynical hat that's always willing to see the devil in everything, as opposed to seeing God in everything. Yeah. And so, because we live in a fallen world where it's God's world, but the world is fallen. So there's that double reality. So I'm always quick to see the sin and not to see the grace. And so what I'm always doing now with everything that I'm reading is I'm looking, for the godless perspective that's showing itself in a counterfeit way that's very appealing, that's quite close to the original. And yet, I've also got to say, there's something wonderful in this that's borrowed from God because it's a common grace gift that people are building on. And so I'm switching between these two hats all the time. So I'm criticizing, enjoying, criticizing, enjoying.
You'd be watching, a series on Netflix the same way, though, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
all the time. My Christian worldview is always switched on. So for me, it's not a moment of becoming unchristian. It's a moment of me applying my Christianity to a scenario. And so recently I started a little RPG series called He Who Fights with Monsters, and it's written by a young guy in Australia who is clearly some sort of Peter Singer style secularist who just wanted to use religion as a whipping boy. And it was a thin, tepid, useless storytelling. It's extremely popular. Lots of people love it. And I think it's because it's appealing to the base of what people already think in terms of their basic prejudices against religion. I couldn't get through 2 hours of it. I had to just return the book. It was so boring. Everyone else loves it. So I returned it because it's not engaging my what I usually do when I'm listening to or reading a book.
So
So
all of that though sounds like a lot of work. You know, I know there'll be people listening to this going, okay, fine, you know, you're taking this on like, you know,
yeah,
but I
but again,
mean,
that's Nick listening to RPG.
right.
So here's Nick having fun. It's staying up until 2 a.m. talking theology with Mike while Mike
Okay.
wants to go to bed. You know, that's Nick having fun.
I can vouch.
So
Although I won't get to experience that this year. That'll be your gig, Andrew. But yeah, I mean, so okay, so that's an important point then. You know, like yeah,
personality
this is like
driving it.
this is like a theological nerd approaching like
Yeah.
the fun factor, you know, through some normal rubric like Netflix. Um, but you know, you could see how it might be a better use of time for you with that personality to do something like music or you know, to something that switches off, you know, that allows you to do that.
For
But
me,
again,
that is
it comes
switching
back
off.
to that.
Yeah.
But it is also a little bit about, okay, so recreation is one thing, rest is one thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's as black and white as saying, right, you're either living for your vocation or you're resting. You know, so so earlier on when we're talking about that, you're saying, well, rest is important in order to fulfill your vocations. But that doesn't necessarily mean those are the only two things that exist, right? So I do think there is some space for simply. So I don't know when I am looking at a novel, I'm looking for things that I don't know what the right word is, are captivatingly beautiful. No, I'm not. I'm not even. I just want to be so sucked into the story and the world that I can see myself there. I'm looking around. I'm inspired by the concepts and whatever. So a classic example of this is Stephen Erickson's Malazan Book of the Fallen, that 10-volume set. My goodness, like it's got everything. You know, it's got philosophy, it's got epic worlds, it's got like strange characters, it's got mythology, it's got lore. I mean, it's written by an archaeologist and what was the other thing? Sociologist. So he's like, you know, he's got all those different elements in his writings. And I'm just looking to get sucked right in there because there is something in me that has a hunger for beauty, for subcreation, and I'm looking to satisfy that hunger somehow. Like, you know, it's not necessarily rest because a large part of what I do is read. And so if I'm reading when I'm not working, I'm not necessarily relaxing like I would if I was, you know, had a bourbon around the fire or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is doing something very, very healthy to me. So, and I'm enjoying it. I'm striving for beauty. But the danger with that kind of thing, the danger with it is that it's great, but
you want to quit and you want to become a fictional author.
That's it. At some point, I have to remember that I'm still in the overlap of the ages. I'm still a sojourner. And it's a little bit like Pilgrim's Progress, right? And when they get to the forest, and I forget what it's called now, when he gets to that glade or something, and he falls asleep, you know, and the scroll rolls out of his thing.
Yes,
he's
just
there
too long. He's just there too long. He's resting too long. But it was great that he was there. It was a good thing, and he does need it. But he was there too long, and I think that in some sense, like especially when you're a Christian, especially those sorts of desires for the world to come are awakened in you. You know, you're longing for the new Eden. You're longing for the new creation, and you can see glimpses and glimmers of it in this world. But if you stay there too long, it can distract you.
Well, there is this other factor that I think drives a lot of Piper, what he's saying, and I think, you know, a lot of, like, say Jonathan Edwards, you mentioned John Wesley, and you know, it's a lot of that ethic. I feel this. I feel the clock ticking. You know, like you have to redeem the time, not only because your life is so short, and you know, it's that next stage is going to be. It's a lot of time.
You are in the age where you're ready for a midlife crisis.
Well, the problem is I've been having this midlife crisis from the moment I became a Christian. So this is, you know, this is the issue. Well, maybe that means something. Maybe I'm at the end of life or something. Who knows what that actually means? We'll weigh in on that when we all know where we are. But you know, there is this I think, you know, is wrapped up in my sense of call to ministry, I suppose, is the best way to put it. Like I felt like I could not do anything else but
Yeah.
ministry, because and this is how I knew. When I tried to do something else, I heard the clock go tick, tick, tick. And that clock for me was just like, you're wasting your life. You're wasting your life. You're wasting, plug into what is eternal. Do what is eternal. Throw your whole. And I realized afterwards, I now think that is like, it's not a legitimate way to think about the issue. It's almost saying there's no integrity or value in secular work, which is, it's wrong. You shouldn't say that. That's not the right way to think. But for me personally, that's just, I think, what was going on in terms of a sense of call. I just had to plug in. So a lot of that biblically is wrapped up in redeem the time. What is God calling you to do with this quick little time that you have, this breath before you go and dwell with Him forever? And so a lot of that's that intensity. That's why I think I would love to have had this conversation with Wesley, or Jonathan Edwards, because they would probably say quite insane things on this.
Yeah.
I remember.
But you see, I think
I was going to say I gave the Wesley biography by Ian Murray to a pastor's wife. He was now retired. He was out of the ministry, and she read through the first part of the biographies on Wesley, the machine, the robot, the legend, and the second part was on just some of the guys who followed Wesley. And one of the guys who followed Wesley, the thing that stood out for her in the whole book was a man who said that when he became older, he stopped feeling guilty about having a second lamb chop. And so, here she was at the end of her life. She'd served as a pastor's wife very faithfully in many ways. And she the thing she most appreciated was, after reading all this incredible biography, where young men read these biographies and all they want to go out there is they all want to go and be David Brainerd, praying in the snow for 8 hours till the snow melts around them, coughing up lungs in prayer because they've got tuberculosis as they've been giving their lives to the Indians. Young guys see it that way, but she got to the end of her life and she was like, I just so appreciated that this guy finally felt the burden of performance anxiety finally lift at some point. And that gave me a lot of peace. I thought, that was an interesting takeaway.
Yeah, well, I mean, exactly. But I think a lot of it is to do with vocation. So I think the reason that Mike feels that way is because of what his calling is. So the reason he can't be an accountant is because he's not called to be an accountant.
Yeah.
That is it at the end of the day. A Christian who's called to be an accountant to the glory of God is going to be perfectly content with crunching numbers. That's in fact, he's going to feel a profound sense of
I'm doing what I need to do.
Fulfillment. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I'm getting it done. And in the same way with the mechanic or the doctor or the whatever, I mean, in some sense, your vocation, those sorts of instincts, while you always have to guard the excesses and guard them from going off in unhealthy directions, in some sense, do help us determine what it is that we are meant to be doing in this world. But I think maybe a third factor to throw into this is I think very helpfully from Chris Ash's book on burnout is to remember that we are dust at the end of the day. So I remember. So I don't know. You might call it the humility tool or the Ecclesiastes tool or something like that. It's I remember being profoundly helped by this because when I started out pastoring here in Felixstowe, and I was just like, wow, so many things I got to do, so many people I got to try and reach, and so many ideas I've got to try and
so many books to read.
So many. Well, there's all that, and just work to be done, right? And I was starting to get like a couple of years into this, and I'm starting to get stressed because I'm just not getting any of it done. Like I'm not even, the tip of the iceberg is not even there. And I remember reading one-to-one Ecclesiastes with another guy in the church and just being so comforted by it, ironically, because it's just saying like, you're going to die. And where's all your great labor going to go then? Like it's just remember that you are a finite being who's called to live in this world for a finite amount of time. And there's only so much you can get done. And let's be honest, no one's going to remember what you do anyway. and
Well,
say,
okay.
just do what you need to do
I
and
mean,
get
I
it
get
done.
that. I get that point as a kind of, just an emotional relief at that moment of reading it. I get that, and I think that's right. And obviously, it's a principle there that we're not the creator. We are we are creation and so forth. And amen. But in terms of almost like the flip side of that point, this is what would happen to me, and I think this is right. I would stand by this, in that there is something of the hopelessness of a fallen condition that's being expressed there in Ecclesiastes. Like with it, now that death has entered the scene, I can't plant my garden like Adam could. I can't, I'm gonna die. Who cares anyway? Vanity, vanity. The fallen condition hits me. Um, so what happens with Christianity is not so much that now we get to kind of redeem and get to work within that paradigm, but now here's where the two age thing kicks in that you're living within this fallen age, this age that is, there is vanity all around. There is, you can still feel it. Death is still a real thing. So yeah, any aspirations in the wrong direction, let's put it that way, are going to be met with that thought. So it's almost a guiding principle for a Christian, in that you're going, sure, if you're going to try and build a Babel and try and set your own garden in the east, you're always going to be met with this death thing. But the end of that book, and really I'd say the Bible message at large, is that with what Christ has done, and with this reality that we now, as believers, though we labor in these earth tents, and that we will certainly die, and all of these things are still true, we now get to actually participate in something that is indeed eternal. So we get to experience a significance beyond anything imaginable for anyone, and this is part of the glory of Christianity. I think a lot of what we talk, evangelists usually bring this out, right? When you're just like sitting at the doctor's waiting room or whatever, and you're speaking to a guy who's unimpressive in every way, and you're just having a very mundane moment, you're talking with another soul who will live forever, and they'll bring that out really well, and this eternal perspective. So I think, obviously there's a way to burn out real quick with that thinking as well, but there is just something about that you it's got to drive you, right? It's got to shape you, knowing.
It comes down to stewardship.
Yeah, you know that it's
You
not
see,
just going to end
but
with
on that
nothing.
point,
You're not just going to be dust. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's something more going on. Yeah. So why not give everything to that something more?
You could if you wanted to. You could if you can.
Yeah.
And what I mean, because basically the whole of my Christian walk has been striking a balance between burning out as a zealous martyr,
See, now,
going
yeah,
out
because that's why.
in a flame of
Exactly.
fire, and
Yes.
trying to find that place of know thyself.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I guess maybe I've just become very content with. This is Nick speaking now. I've been called to be a pastor here in the town of Timaru. It's not my job to write books to educate the world. It's not my job to produce sermons that will benefit the whole church at large. My job is to be faithful to people I've been called to. And if I'm doing that job well, then I can also look out my window and spend some time just glorying in nature, relaxing, wasting time with my wife. Doing stuff that's completely spiritually unproductive, but it's just we're enjoying the moments that the five senses engage in, that whether it's watching a movie or taking a walk or going on a holiday somewhere. It's as long as I'm doing what I'm called to do, and that's where vocation
No, well, I like that. That's
come
kind of where we keep coming back to that point, don't we? And you are a good example, I think, because as you are that guy that could burn out. I mean, you've got a very intense personality. You take everything on like all the way to the hilt, and yet you found a good balance, it seems, to the point that I want that.
Constantly balancing.
Yeah,
it never stops. You never stop. The pendulum never stops swinging.
Yeah,
it's always a case of compensating for, oh, my conscience is niggling me, I better respond to that. Oh, I need to dig in a bit deeper here. Oh, I'm wasting too much time doing that. I should be going visit that person.
Yeah. Okay, so you do still experience some of that. That's good to know. Okay,
definitely.
Good.
No, the pendulum never is never still.
Yeah.
Never still.
Okay, so I mean that's good.
I think you just get better at knowing yourself and what you need to rest,
and knowing your calling,
knowing what because I mean I think one of the problems that we're seeing in the world today is people are taking too much upon themselves emotionally.
Yeah, overinflating their own sense of importance.
I've probably got a very good ability to turn off my emotions. because everything going on in the world right now, we've got all this news being forced down our throats. I know people who can't turn it off. I know people who can't stop emotionally reacting to it all of the time.
Yeah.
And it's whether it's every person's problems in my church. I mean, the Bible says, cast your cares upon him because he cares for you. Every time I feel a burden, I know where to take it. I roll it off in prayer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Silence.
yeah.
Well, and I do think that is the point from Ecclesiastes, I think, is that eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die. I mean, in other words, what he's saying is like, look, you just remember your place in the cosmos, kind of thing. Don't get ahead of yourself. Don't feel like you're going to be building ziggurats that are going to reach the heavens.
Yes,
like that's not for you to be doing. But there is also, ironically, that same verse quoted in the New Testament to say, but that's not all that there is. So, and that's that kind of two-age tension that I think that is the other point. But it's a little bit like if you use, again, the Lord of the Rings thing as an illustration, right? You got the band of the Fellowship of the Ring, and they're going to take the ring to Mordor, right? And now, on that journey, all the way, and if you use that as like a parallel with the Christian life, and that you've got a job to do, you've got a vocation, you've got to fulfill it. We're ultimately serving kingdom ends, and we've got to have our mind on that, and we're doing that. But they have to stop along the way. They have to stop not only to rest, but also to laugh and enjoy beauty, and to make, and to live and to be human and that kind of thing. And if they don't do that, they just cannot fulfill the task. And also, and if they are fulfilling the task, it becomes like some weird, distorted, like parable of the two sons. You become the former son, where you're just kind of slaving away under the thing, but there's no enjoyment. There's no sense of anticipation of the joys to come. It's a little bit like you're waiting for Christmas, but you're not really excited for the presents and everything like that, because and if that's happened because you're so busy, preparing to get everything ready and that kind of thing. And it's not right. You should be enjoying the anticipation.
Yet secretly, I still think David Brandon was better.
Right.
Yet secretly, I still think going out in a blaze of glory is
finally
better.
We get to the bottom of it. This is actually what I wanted to talk about.
I still feel that it's, why not? Why can't I be the one who gives it all away and is spent and being spent as a drink offering on everyone else's sacrifice for the, glorying in the sorrows for the church. Paul lays down his life, conforming himself to Christ's own sufferings.
Yeah, because I mean, even if you're, this is, it's such a fine, I find it's such a it gets so blurry as to what point it becomes just a kind of settledness with this world, because I think about Jesus. Okay, now obviously Jesus he's in his own category. We've got rid of our what would Jesus do bracelets and whatnot, but at the same time, I mean, he's focused, right? I'm sure there was downtime, but there wasn't a lot of it. It didn't seem like there was a lot of it. There was just, whoa, there he is going for it. There is this language in Paul. I mean, Paul just did not seem very balanced on this point. Let's put it that way.
To live is Christ. So Christ, what does it mean to say to live is Christ? It means to constantly serve others at cost to self for their greatest good, not your own. That's what a cross-shaped life looks like. It's giving yourself. And that doesn't mean that Paul didn't have nice meals. That doesn't mean that, but sometimes he didn't.
He had that second chop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, I mean, we're in a position, and that's why I say that it's always impossible to argue against the good pushing out the best, because technically we should want the best to the glory of God as our highest goal.
Yes.
And so you're always going to look like a flake,
right?
By arguing against the principle of the good pushing out the best.
Yes.
But you see, but you've got to know yourself.
Again, though, vocation, because there's nothing wrong with you burning yourself out, like in that sense, like going to death, like John Owen, who died in his 40s. Although we
George
all
Whitfield,
wish he'd lived
Charles
another...
Spurgeon. How much did Charles Spurgeon?
We all, but you see, we
he
all
seemed quite well adept to the whole recreation thing. Spurgeon.
Yeah, he had that covered. He died from gout, if anything.
That guy worked himself to the bone.
He did, though. But you see, I again, John Owen could do that. That's fine. there are two things to consider. The one is that I think we all wish John Owen lived another 40 and kept writing. So that's one factor. It's like, yeah, work
I think you
yourself to
wrote
the
quite
bone.
enough. There's no ways I'm going to get through even one of his books.
He's hard. He's
Okay.
a hard read, old John.
He's a hard read.
All right.
Man.
Okay. Second point. Second point is that, that again, it comes down to vocation, because Paul was like, yeah, to live as Christ, to die as gain. Therefore, do not get married. Live a single life and live it for Christ. Now that ship is sailed.
I made a vow. I made a vow to be single, and man, that vow hurt my Christianity for a long time.
Yeah. Probably was offensive to your wife as well. I mean,
because I knew that you couldn't break your vows, so I boxed myself in with a vow. Yeah. So like,
oh, got it. Wow.
Yeah.
See, this is the onion layer unfolding right here. This is what yet he listens to lit RPG. So it's like, boom. Exactly. This is a conquering of the hill.
But this is my point though. So none of us would say, I'm assuming none of us would say, actually, I'm starting to lose confidence, but none of us would say, right, that everybody has to be single or should be single, or it's an ideal for everyone to be single.
Quietists do say that. Quakers.
Quakers say that, but I'm saying none of us.
No.
Right?
There's that whole
hang on. Let me just think about that.
Well, the Roman Catholics.
So the point is, because getting married is not a secondary Christian life, whatever. But vocation, if you are called to be single, then you do that, and then whatever. Of course.
Yes. No, that's a great point. It is a great point, because there you have a very tangible thing. This folds into some of my sanity that I'll share as well, because basically the I think there you have a very concrete, there is a vocational calling there that is not what you are, and you just can see that very clearly, and that is okay. We are not Roman Catholic Protestant, we are Protestant, we are with you on that. So then it's just a matter of working it out consistently. And I think what it becomes, it's almost like you don't have to lose any of the intensity. You can say, all right, no, I am going full scale. I'm just going to jump right in and give as best as I can on this thing. But what my best means is stewardship and priority. So like it's inappropriate for me to let my kids be sacrificed on the altar of ministry. In fact, I know that because that's the qualification for an elder. I've got to have an ordered family in order to be qualified for the role of ministry, if I'm going to do this well. So I'm not flaking out at that point. What I'm doing is prioritizing so that I can do it the best I can. And I think that's where I found that rest gives me the most sanity, or it's the most sane way for me to approach the rest subject, because you know what you need and how to keep going, and what's good for you, what's bad for you, and it's just a matter of working that through honestly. And it's okay if you know where that priority of rest is, to have rest, and why that priority matters, just like that time with your wife. Because if that time with your wife is not there, you don't have a good marriage, and therefore you're disqualified for ministry and blah blah blah. Or even just the way it sometimes works with wife and kids, like even if you're spending too much time with your kids and not enough time with your wife, all of that sort of helps. There's a priority there that's important to give yourself completely for this calling and task that if you're in ministry, you're called to.
Exactly. So and there also are dangers with literature. So I mean, there are perks. So when I try to expose myself to as many genres of literature as possible. Lit RPG is only one. So what I'm doing there is I'm expanding my, I'm traveling.
I saw you with that Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies.
Yeah, that's the one. I won't tell you about the other stuff. but here as a preacher, as someone who uses words regularly, being exposed to lots of dialogue, lots of words, being exposed to lots of illustration, imagination, these things are all incredibly helpful to me in what I'm doing as a writer and as a speaker.
Right.
There's a lot of benefit that I accrue from engaging with literature.
Yes.
Most people will be enriched by reading literature, full stop.
Yes.
It's a way to travel. It's a way to have dialogue. It's a way to argue. It's a way to dream. It's a way to do so many things that we need to do as human beings. It should never be a full-blown it should never be a full-blown.
Dude, most people will be enriched by engaging with literature, full stop. Can you see it? It's right there on that. That'll be great. That's happening. Watch the
Yeah,
merch store.
exactly. Now,
Keep
if
going.
it's a substitute that replaces real life, problem. But it should be an enrichment. It should be a seasoning to it.
Right.
But then on the danger side of too much literature is basically, you're so emotionally engaged in another world that you're not engaged in your own. You're so emotionally disengaged from reality that you need this well-sculpted reality to stimulate your ability to engage with another person's life. And so it can be dulling, distracting, and all absorbing and take too much time. And so you've got to find the balance with how that's going to fit into your life.
I think there's something to be said. Maybe this is pushing it too far, and maybe this is making it too complicated. But I don't know. For me, I think this helps. Like, for an engineer to be involved with Legos, however you say it, is it kind of makes sense. You can see how the one would enrich the other. There's a kind of alignment there. For someone who's an artist who has some other artistic expression in a different medium and whatnot. For a pastor, though, to have leisure time be reading in different genres seems to make sense. It seems like that, or you might want to argue the other way around. You're sitting down reading all day, so maybe you need something that's absolutely not that.
Well, that's why I do audiobooks and not reading books.
Okay, there we go. You got that covered too, huh?
Yeah.
Jeez. Well, I know what book you should write. I mean, this is like, dude, you seem to have nailed this. That's all I'm saying.
I've filled up every gap in my life with something. Yeah.
But there's something along those lines. So for I'm not entirely like, I feel like neck cramps for sitting on my desk all day or whatever. So if I'm doing another thing that's a pastime that's also like, video games or whatever, it's just like not gonna be a good thing for me ultimately. So I think there is some of that as well that we have to try and work. You got to be clever with your rest and leisure time, right? You got to it's also, even though it's a thing, it doesn't mean it's like we're not Christians anymore, rules are off, do whatever you want for like 1 hour a week or whatever. That's another thing that I think people might hear us saying. And that's not really what we're aiming for. We're aiming for an enrichment through rest.
Yeah. And I mean, there are going to be personality types that are addictive. Like anyone who's into binging has an addictive personality disorder. That's me. It's basically, it's my learning style. It's how I get deeply into anything.
Yes.
So it works for me and against me. And so I've just got to know that about myself. And I've got to, sometimes my wife has to call me to account to say, I think you've spent enough time doing that now. Like, thanks, Babs. Pull me out of the hole,
I will not hearken to the voice of my wife. One of those Matrix moments. Yeah, exactly. Okay, by the way, let's end off with man, I just started watching what's it called? What's it called? The new one on Apple TV, the dystopian future.
Silo.
Okay, here's my I hate apocalyptic genres. Now, let me tell you why.
Okay.
It's not because I don't like zombies. Zombies are a great analogy.
I don't like zombies, but I still like.
I don't mind the Hunger Games Maze Runner style dystopian future.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what disturbs me about apocalypse. So like, and I've exposed myself to several of them, and I feel something inside of me revolting, and this is what it is. Imagine a Noah
covenant.
Imagine a world with no common grace.
Oh, there we go. Noah covenant.
So imagine a world where the government's not working.
Yeah.
There's no police force.
Yeah.
There's no laws. The sin in every man's heart is rife, and you've got these terrible people being victimized from every angle.
Yeah.
Something in me just revolts at that, and I cannot endure it.
Yeah, because
I actually literally stopped listening to it.
Well, that's
it's
Cain.
Like the road.
I mean, that's what Cain said. I cannot endure that. You gotta give me a city.
Honestly.
Yeah,
it's a world without common grace is an absolute nightmare. For me, that's horror.
Oh, totally. I'm with you. Big time.
I actually can't cope with it. When I see someone who's just constant from every angle, and there are no restraints on sin, something in me just withdraws.
Wow.
It's the one genre I avoid. That's so weird, eh?
That is.
I can like do like edgy stuff, but I can't do that.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I definitely feel that, but I suppose that morbid curiosity is what draws me. I'm like, what?
My kid was watching Ice Age. You know the squirrel? and the squirrel couldn't get the nut at the beginning. That nut keeps going. My son was crying for the squirrel, and he couldn't watch it because the squirrel couldn't get the nut, and everything was breaking a squirrel. I feel like my son.
Oh, dude,
That is
okay.
brilliant.
That is
I don't even know.
Yeah, I knew that it would be worth doing the show. We would get some insight into Nick Fury, and that would make it worthwhile. All right, so we are probably out of time here, but on the issue of recreation, am I right in saying we've got this vocation? We've got to think in terms of our vocation. We've got to know what it is that God called us to do. Number two, we've got to remember that we're not shooting for our best life now in our recreation. Number three, we've got to think about the kind of recreation that we avail ourselves to. It's got to, yeah, it's got to work. It can't be it's not a switching off and not being a Christian. It can't be something that aggravates you further. It's got to be something that works. So you got to put a little thought into this, and it might even require a thoughtfulness throughout and a chopping and changing on this point. What am I leaving out?
And secretly, David Brainerd was right.
And secretly, David Brainerd was right.
No, I was going to say, and also know your dust. So know your limitations. There are some things you might want to do, but you just don't have the capacity.
Right. I mean, that's a huge one. Like, don't overinflate your sense of self-importance. I wanted to say then, it's like that. When you suddenly realize in ministry, actually, it doesn't actually even matter if you're there or not. You thought it mattered. You thought everyone cared if you were there.
Yeah.
And then you realize that they're fine without you, on that point. So you don't even have to burden yourself on that point. You can just relax there. That moment that I think every pastor kind of has eventually. I think you got to have that with life, which, with egotistical, megalomaniacs like myself, it's hard to get there, and this is what sometimes is the culprit at the bottom of it all. Wow. What a way to end.